All right, now let's move on to this week's feature articles.
Craig Cochran.
Craig Cochran, that's right. Craig Cochran, of course, is a longtime Quality Digest contributor, and he's a project manager at the Georgia Tech Enterprise Innovation Institute. He's also the author of several books, including a brand new one right here from Paton Professional titled The 7 Lessons Management Tools for Success. Great book. Now, in the book, Cochran talks about the story of B&C Specialty Products, which is a fictional company, fictional Georgia-based manufacturer faced with some not-so-fictional problems, things that we see all the time in the real world. Slipping sales, demoralized employees, declining customer satisfaction, poor overall quality, right? We've seen it a lot. The story of how they turned it around makes for an entertaining and a really enlightening read. It provides some practical advice for anyone who wants to see improvement in their own organizations. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the 7 lessons and how they can be applied right now with the author Craig Cochran, who's joining us via Skype. Craig, are you there?
I sure am. Thanks for having me, Mike, Dirk.
Hey, Craig, how's it going, man?
Doing fantastic.
All right.
Good. Yes.
Like your wall back there. That's pretty interesting.
It keeps the evil spirits away.
I guess.
Very important. Very important to do that. Well, Craig, let's get started. Let's jump off here, which was the basics. What prompted you to write this book? How did it originate, and why did you decide to frame your story in the way that you did?
Well, I first got started down the road of being a quality speaker and writer by being an internal consultant. To the companies I worked for. And I think that's probably the most important role that a quality person can have as an internal consultant, not solving problems for people, but enabling other people to solve problems, kind of a consultancy role. So that's how the story is framed, a consultant going into a business and, teaching them how to fish, so to speak, helping them solve their own problems. And I just wanted other people to see how the process works, being a consultant and providing that type of guidance.
And that's exactly how, again, when the readers out there, the viewers out there read the book, they'll see that it's framed in that you have a consultant that goes into B&C and begins to help them unspool some of these problems that they're having. And of course, according to the title, you present it through these 7 lessons. Can you quickly review what those 7 lessons are for us? Sure.
They're very simple concepts. The 7 lessons are neglecting strategy, ignoring your true cost, managing in silos, treating customer complaints as insignificant, ineffective problem solving, hiring the wrong people, and not thanking your own employees.
Now those are great. I mean, those are great practical lessons. Those 7 would help any company, I think, who is having problems cover a lot of their situations and help them improve. But my question to you is, why those 7? Why not things like, I don't know, error reduction or new product development? Why did you pick those 7 as the key 7 that you feel are the answers to help these companies improve?
Well, they struck me as being the most universal and widely applicable lessons that apply to any business, manufacturing, service, anybody. And they're also fairly easy for a so-called consultant, whether they're internal or external, to actually facilitate progress against. So simple things, easy to forget, but also easy to put practices and processes in place that lead to improvement in these areas. A quick bang for the buck, so to speak.
Right, and it's great you say that, because that's what a lot of us and a lot of the folks out there are looking for. I mean, we need these quick solutions to problems. Obviously, a lot of these problem situations need to be, again, unspooled and looked at, and there needs to be process being put into place. But the results need to happen real quick. In the case of B&C, in the story that you put forth, JT, I think JT was the name of the owner, was saying to the author at the beginning, or saying to the narrator at the beginning, hey, we're going to be out of business in a year. We need to improve right now. So that really is kind of, I think, how you approached it, was getting in, rolling up your sleeves, and being able to do it right away, right?
Exactly. That's right. And these basic lessons will provide, a real quick improvement. I mean, just one of them, for instance, ineffective problem solving. Having a problem solving method in place, people understanding how it works, people not being afraid to use it, and employees at all levels of the organization applying it. I mean, just that one thing alone produces such incredible improvements.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because that's a good point, and that actually ties in, I think, as well with the idea of silos, because many times in organizations, even small organizations, from the book, again, BNC is not a huge organization, but different parts of the company do things in different ways, and how important is it that again, everybody gets on the same page and immediately begins to implement things, talk the same language in terms of quality improvement?
Well, you bring up a good point. The fictional company, BNC Specialty Products, is not a big place. But I think if you get more than 3 people in a room and call it a company or organization, you're going to naturally start getting silos, right? I mean, just people have different skills, different activities, and just, being smart folks, you focus on what you have to do, your own responsibilities and your own processes, and just that naturally leads to some isolation from everybody else. So if you're really working with anybody other than yourself, there's the strong chance there's going to be some siloing happening. Mm-hmm. So you have to continually, fight against that and set up a communication processes that discourage that type of separation.
Absolutely, very, very common thing that we see. Now, I won't ask you to name names, but I'm sure you've seen your share of BNC specialty sales in your career. What would you say for organizations like this? What is the single biggest obstacle to getting started on the road to quality improvement?
I would say from a consultancy standpoint, because that's the storyteller in this book, is the consultant that goes in and tries to make change happen. And that's, if you're an internal consultant to a company, the obstacle is you're part of them. You're just an idiot who's like everybody else in the company. And that's why there are so many external consultants out there, is because, if you're from outside the company and have a briefcase and a plane ticket, you must be brilliant, right? So that's probably the single biggest obstacle from a consultancy standpoint. Just from a general standpoint, it's fear of change, fear of doing something different. And change is not always good. So I think it's being afraid of change and the change agents not managing it, not telling people, here's what we're doing, and here's exactly why we're doing it. Here's why we have to do it, and here's what you're going to personally get out of it, and short term and long term, and here's what the organization will ultimately get out of it. So fear of change, which comes from not understanding the change, coming from the leaders not really talking about it in an effective way.
Hey, Craig, in your book, you basically your example, your fictional example was a manufacturing company. Is there any difference in how these lessons are applied in, let's say, a service-oriented company or more of a transactional environment?
Absolutely not. And that's one of the reasons I like these 7 lessons so much, is they are so applicable and universal to anything. I mean, lesson number 2, ignoring your true costs. I go to service companies all the time that don't really understand, what it takes, how much money it takes to do a repair. They're doing repairs every day, but they have no idea what it's really costing them. So every one of these is applicable to any kind of organization: service, governmental, military, manufacturing, really any organization that's doing work. These are applicable.
Yeah, Craig, I want to touch on something you mentioned a few moments ago, because it's a pet, I don't want to say it's a pet peeve of mine, but I guess it's an interest of mine, is this idea of fearing change. And it seems like it's an endemic psychological thing with most people, that they just don't want to change, even though a consultant like yourself can come in and you are qualified and people trust you, yet you say, hey, I've seen this work a zillion times, we've got to do it this way, we've got to change, and immediately there's that resistance, and sometimes it's overt, sometimes it's subtle, but it's always there. What's your perspective on that? I'm interested to hear, why do you think that people are so resistant to change?
Well, I think routine is very comfortable. Even a flawed process is a process that you're familiar with and comfortable with. There's lots of things that I do day to day that I know that are, not as good as they could be, but I understand them and I'm comfortable with them, so I just prefer to kind of keep on chugging. And I think that's the way most people are, faced with what I'm doing now versus some unknown in the future. I kind of prefer just doing what I'm doing now, even though there's a promise to be better, that there's a promise for improvement and great benefits or whatever. Hey, I've got a reality that I understand and a future state that I don't really understand. So I don't like uncertainty. So I'm going to put up every obstacle I can to prevent the change from happening. And that's where the problem is. People just don't understand. People don't communicate the change and don't really explain the background, the rationale, and the real need to do something different than what we're doing now. Because change is always going to be uncomfortable. Even change that leads to terrific improvement, right this second, it's real uncomfortable. So I have to understand why it's necessary and what I'm going to get out of it.
Well, that's one thing I really liked about your book is the fact that I think you make that really approachable, that you take the idea of change and you read this book, and I encourage people out there to read the book. You read the book and you get a very welcoming story out of it that you can say, well, we can get through it.
Right. Because
you read about BNC and you say, gosh, man, they're having some problems, and maybe my organization's having some problems too, but they got through it, and they got through it by being able to embrace the change and doing that. So it's a good book. I'm sure you had a fun time writing it as well. We had a fun time reading it here.
Thank you so much. And none of it's hypothetical. All of this is real stuff that I've personally led at organizations and helped facilitate. So it's set in a fictional context, of course, but the actual scenarios that are described are all real. It's all happened multiple times. So even though it's a fictional thing, it really is a true roadmap that somebody could use tomorrow to drive significant change.
Well, that's great. Well, Craig, thanks again for joining us. Again, the name of the book, The 7 Lessons Management Tools for Success, published by Paton Professional. And again, story link just below our player page right there. You can go out and you can order it for yourself and check it out. Really good book. Craig, thanks for joining us. We had a great time, and we'll be chatting with you soon again.
Excellent.
Okay, thanks, Craig.
Have a nice weekend.
You too, man. Talk to you later.